the same thing, or is it very different for everyone?
That's a really sweet question, actually. Yeah, like if we zoom out and take it in the most general way, people come because there's something in their life that they're feeling lost about, and they just want some guidance, you know? They just want to know what the right thing to do is. And that's where I sort of have this feeling of sweetness coming from, because it really shows me that like we're just trying to do the best that we can in the world, like whatever walk of life we're in, whatever we're doing, whatever profession, like we're just in our own way, all trying to do the right thing. Sometimes it can be more goal specific, you know, and that's okay too, as long as they're willing to be open to what wisdom comes. Sometimes people come with a specific question or topic that they want to discuss. And so we open up the cards for that. But then sometimes it sort of sidetracks, and the information that comes sort of lets this person know, like, actually, like, yes, I know that's important to you, but what you really need to deal with first is this. This topic right here is like, this needs your attention, this needs your time and your care and your love. And then it will open up the path for you to deal with that other topic. So there is a wisdom that comes through that can even go beyond our own wishes and desires. And I think this is the other thing that I really love, because especially when I read for friends, you know, I know them. And sometimes you come with questions that I'm like, oh my God, I can tell you the answer to this. You know, like we don't need to look at the cards.
We really don't need to, we don't have to ask the cards that,
Exactly. But then, you know, but when they come to me for that, it's like, okay, so then let's see what the cards have to say. Because in that moment, they're not asking for me, for my opinion as a friend, you know? And sometimes the wisdom that comes through the cards just blows me away. And I'm like, man, actually, that was way smarter than what I would have said to you. If you would have just asked me, you know? So I also get to learn sometimes from the readings that I give to other people.
And funny, because there's another question I wanted to ask you, but you kind of already were mentioning something about it now, is it different to read for friends, like for people that you know? Like, do you feel, because you know them, is there like a filter from you, or how does that work?
I think when I started in the very beginning, there was a little bit of difficulty, especially because I felt my ego sort of getting in the way. But, you know, with time, it just, and maturity, it just kind of like melted away. It's really clear for me when I'm giving a card reading, like I put aside every personal opinion that I might have on something. The only thing that might happen with a friend, someone I know, is that like I might have to just ask them a little bit less because I happen to already know what their circumstances are. But in any case, any session that I have with anyone, whether I know them for 10 years or whether I'm meeting them for the first time, I will have to ask questions, because sometimes information comes and I don't really know where it needs to land. So I might need to ask a little bit just to feel into the whole picture better, so that I'm delivering the message in a more responsible way. And
do you feel like when you're reading, are you channeling? Like it's someone else kind of?
You're absolutely channeling. Yeah. It's like, sometimes I have the feeling that the cards are talking to me. They're like, sometimes I feel like they're even screaming at me, like, you have to say this to that person, really. Sometimes it's really straightforward. But a lot of times it's just like the card is telling a story, and then what's being channeled is like a feeling or an intuition, or, you know, especially when I need to ask someone questions, so I can understand where this message is going to land. As soon as they say the right thing, it's clear for me, okay, this message is exactly for that, you know? And that's a really fluid process that has just developed over time with trust. Like me, I had to bring my own trust into the process. Because sometimes, you know, especially when I first started actually doing it professionally, not just reading for friends here and there, I felt like, okay, they're paying me. I have to really deliver. I have to make sure that I deliver something good for them, you know? And once I sort of learned to just put that aside and say, hey, they're here, we are here, and we are holding a space for healing and for transformation and for empowerment. And as long as we stay true to our intention with that, whatever needs to come is going to be exactly the right thing that needs to come. And I just need to trust that.
Yeah.
And the more I learned to, the more beautiful the sessions were. So by now, you know, it's for me like full trust. I can only go in with complete humbleness, because the amounts of times that I've been like not smacked across the face, but really like, yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
You know, with the wisdom that came, that humbled me so much. I understand now, like, this is really, I put myself there to be a channel, to be in service, and I just love what comes every time when I show up that way.
Yeah, and you also do you kind of do like a little meditation or something before you start? Like, is there something that you do to kind of open up the channel in a way? Like, do you have your own practices for that?
Yeah, so it can also depend on who's in front of me. But standard with every person, we always take a few moments of silence to just tune in to the intention. I give them the space to really. What I ask of each person that I read for is, after they sort of share with me what they would like to look at in the session, then I give them space to really internalize that into their hearts. You know, like to really come into this heart space.
Yeah.
And while they're doing that, I'm having my
Excuse me.
So then I will take a moment to have my own grounding process and to just check in with myself and to create the space by just saying, like, okay, I'm here. May I be in service to this person? May they hear exactly what they need to hear today? And may I just allow this to come through? So I always have to set myself up for each session as well.
And is it different do you still read for yourself? Like, do you read your own cards, for example, when you're home, or?
Sometimes. I generally, for myself, I do more like general single card readings. If I start getting into deeper questions, it can be tricky. Like, I'm not going to say I can't do it for myself, because I have, but I do find that if I really want to have a full reading, I appreciate if I can have someone else that I trust doing it for me, because then I'm not doing both the channeling and the processing of the information. If I have someone I trust, I allow them to do that, and then I can be with the information that comes. And sometimes I find it a little bit exhausting to do both at the same time. And why? You know, if you have someone that you know is there for you, it's as much as we can do a lot of things on our own, I don't necessarily think that it means that we should or that we have to always do it on our own just because we can. It's also really nice to be supported by someone.
Yeah. And if there's people listening now, or in general, like if people like you, they fell in love or they fall in love with tarot, like, do you recommend like them doing, like, get a good card deck and do it at home, like to do your own readings when they've gotten excited about it? Like, is that something that you would advise people to do, or?
Absolutely. Like, if and it's already happened. I've had several friends who I've done readings for, and usually this is how it happens. It's how it happened for me too. I had several readings, and then one day I had one that just changed my life, and that's the one that brought me here to Portugal.
Wow. Yeah.
And I understood from that moment that this is something I need to be working with, you know?
Yeah.
So, and that's happened. So a few of my friends that I read with, the same thing happened. We just had one powerful reading, and then they came back to me a week later and they said, Alice, I can't stop thinking about it. I think I really want to get a deck of cards. And for me, it's really exciting when that happens. So we start looking at different cards together and we start talking about it. And, you know, I think this is the tool that everyone can have, whether you do it professionally or not. It doesn't really matter. It's something I love so much. And if I see someone else resonating in the same way, feeling the same passion for it, I say go for it.
Yeah.
Really, go for it.
And so with that in mind, do you have a certain deck that you say like that is like could you give people advice on a certain deck that you really like, or like
I
is there
tend
a
not to.
beginner's deck or yeah, I don't know. Like
Yeah, I've kind of thrown that whole thing out the window.
mm,
Not that there's anything wrong with it, but I can say the one that I fell in love with it's not a very common one.
mm-hmm,
And the traditional decks that I know, which tend to be the beginner's decks, and most of the courses that you find out there are based on that. These are absolutely not my cards. I can't really read them. I don't feel like they speak to me.
mm-hmm.
So, but I've had readings with other people who use those decks, and they're amazing. So I feel it's a really personal thing. And like
Yeah,
I said, there's a different artwork and a different expression on every deck, and there are just so many out there. Why limit yourself to what someone else says is a beginner's deck? Like
yeah.
how it comes to you or how you approach it.
What
It's
feels
about
good for
finding a
you?
connection.
Yeah,
Yeah. So what I tell people is like, go explore, see how you feel,
yeah.
see if the cards are talking to you.
Speaking to you, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And because it shouldn't be hard. It
And do
shouldn't
you just
feel
use
like
one deck,
it's
or do you have a few at home?
so I have one main one that I tend to do most of my readings with, like
Mm-hmm.
99% of them.
Mm-hmm.
But I have other decks that I also use depending on what the intentions are. So I have a couple of animal spirit decks. I have
Yeah.
one main tarot deck, traditional, like as in the archetypes, traditional.
Yeah.
Um, I have a couple of oracle decks. I love them all.
Yeah.
So they all bring different aspects depending on what I want to ask or which cards I feel like connecting with.
Yeah. 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 I think that that's also, I mean, it's definitely also the same for me in the sense that I really love, like you, I mean, I'm not a reader, but I absolutely love tarot. It's also why I wanted to ask you to have this conversation, because I think it's also definitely changed my life. And I think it is also just, there is this real spiritual access that you're getting to your inner self, through it. And I think that a
Yeah.
lot of times people think that it's this thing of like, oh, she's going to read my future. But really, I mean, it's actually really beautiful it just gives you some message for your life. And sometimes even later on in life, you go, oh, that's what the cards meant, like
Yeah.
where so I mean, and I just got a new deck that is all animal spirits, and it's really beautiful to see all the different animals have these different messages to tell you. So I definitely think, but then there's people who love the goddesses, and people who love the
Hmm.
fairies, and people who love, I don't know, you name it. These days, everything is in a tarot deck.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Even David Bowie.
yeah, anything, I'm sure. But I definitely think that, and I think it's beautiful what you're saying, that you are of service in of others, So it's really beautiful.
I
Yeah,
think anyone who does this professionally has to ask why they're
yeah,
doing it. And if that's not one of the reasons, if not the main reason, then I would really question, yeah, I don't know that I would go to that person
yeah.
for a reading.
No, I totally see what you mean. And can people see you in Lisbon? Like, are you doing sessions at the moment?
So in Lisbon, I need to look for a new space. Right now, I'm just taking online readings.
Ah,
Uh,
great.
that's also something I've been doing for a couple of years now. It's lovely, but of course, if someone is in the city, it's a bit awkward if we're both in the same city doing it online. So that's something I need to look into since I closed the last space. And maybe in the next month I will have that locked in.
But people can find you from this from this podcast. People can find you online or something, and
Yeah,
get you.
absolutely. Yeah,
Cool.
I'm communicating with people over Facebook and Instagram, and I am also developing a new website.
Yeah.
So that's all of this is sort of under construction at the moment.
Because where
When
can
I'm
people
kind of
find
taking
you
things forward.
on Instagram? Can you tell people right
Yeah, my
now?
handle is Alice Ming Blooms,
Perfect. Alice Ming
and
blooms, and she blooms. She
yeah,
blooms. Awesome. I will put it also in in the notes and everything.
Sure.
And what is